she wanted her child to put their own pull-up on. And he was like yelling at her because he wanted her to put it on. And what she said, which felt like gentle parenting to her, which felt like Janet Lansbury style respectful parenting, was, wow, that can be really tricky. Why don't you just put one leg in and then let me know if you need help? I was like, oh, I see how she thinks she did the thing. What she means is not that can be really tricky. And what her child was saying was not, it's too hard for me to put my pull-up on. He's saying, I want you to do it. And what she means is, I'm not going to do that right now. I don't want to put your pull-up on for you. Or my hands are full. I'm not going to do that right now. Or that's something I'm having you practice, so I'm going to leave you to that. But what she said was a very Instagram-y thing. Yeah, I see it can be really tricky to put your pull-up on. Why don't you just go ahead and put one foot in there? And it's this nice kind of fluffy, very indirect thing. The result was that this child yelled at her more. I can do this. I can totally do this. I'm fed. I'm fed. Welcome to the podcast. I've eaten enough.
We just had lunch. We're doing a really fun thing where we record more than one episode in a day, but we make it look like we aren't. But my giveaway, even though we're changing our shirts, is that my hair keeps getting more wet each episode because it's raining outside and we went outside. Welcome back to another episode of Very Good Enough. My name is Jessica Hover.
I'm Lane Dealing-Cherland. Today we're gonna find our way through a conversation about being direct.
Take us away. Well, it's interesting you bring up Instagram because I do think we live in a time where people are going to social media as their reference point for how to do things.
Totally.
And so what are you seeing? What do you see when you look at this topic?
Yeah, it's an interesting moment for me to be a person who is now making content for Instagram alongside of this and taking the role of the person who is saying stuff about parenting, while also being like, a lot of this stuff that I see about parenting is like lame or kind of empty, or like, yeah, that would make a lot of sense if you have a ton of context for what that person means. And it's all very do this or die. Don't do this, but do this instead. Don't ever be doing that. Oh my gosh. You know, like everything's very drama because it sort of has to be in order to get people to see it. But then everybody's seeing this reel that's telling you, like, don't ask your kids questions after school. Just tell them how much you missed them because they'll feel interrogated by you. Right. And I've been bringing that one up as an example a lot because that was sort of a cliff's edge for me. When I saw that, I was like, this is too much, you guys. Don't ask your kids questions after school.
Sure.
Don't ask them what their day was like. Don't ask them what they learned. I'm like, it's like a fine thing to do. Like, it's perfectly fine to ask your child questions.
Right.
Like, the actual advice would be like, maybe keep an eye, if you get in the car with your kids and you ask them questions after school and they seem to like shut down or feel aggravated, or you notice that it's like causing anxiety or whatever. Sometimes kids have been so busy during school that it actually can feel like an interrogation to them to answer more questions. What you could try instead is like this kind of a thing or that kind of, like, that's the actual advice. Yeah. But the tone is like, don't do that.
Yeah. The thing you're speaking to also has to do with the clickbait thing that people need in order for you to see their content. Yep. So they're going to say the more intense thing that makes you like trip out a little, and actually this way is the way that is like way more digestible, but not as algorithm friendly.
No.
So so then we're getting a weird thing where we're going to a place to get wisdom and insight into how to raise our kids. But that thing is being run by this algorithm machine.
Yeah, just a non-people thing.
Yes.
Something that's, it's not that algorithm's job to take care of humans.
Yes.
It's that algorithm's job to get content seen.
Right.
So then everybody sees the same like 200,000 reels.
Right.
And then there's like a new culture around parenting suddenly overnight.
Sure.
Because everybody saw that same thing because that thing got passed and passed and passed and passed and passed. And I want to just like talk about one of the things that I see often and why I would like to cut away all the parts that aren't needed and say like, this is the nugget that makes sense. And all the rest of that is weird fluff.
Cool.
And it has to do with language. because a ton of what's on Instagram is when this happens, don't say this thing, say this thing. Say this, say this, say this instead. And so it's creating this idea that there is a perfect set of words, that if you could just memorize all these words and remember in the moment when that one thing happens, like, oh, say this, then your child will never suffer. You'll never see a tantrum and you'll be like A+ mom. Like if you could just remember the script, then everything is going to go great.
Yeah.
When in fact, those scripts are only useful in as much as there's like a solid principle behind them. So a lot of it is about like, when your child is tantruming, don't yell at them or don't try to instruct them. Say, I see that you're feeling X. Oh, you feel this because that thing happened. Gosh, it's pretty tricky to pull up your pants sometimes. I'm going to let you go ahead and put in one foot and let me know if you need help. It's that kind of stuff when like there's a solid principle there of like when your child is tantruming, it's not going to be useful to be either meeting them in a place of really heightened emotion or this is not a very teachable moment. So your words are wasted. Go ahead and just acknowledge the feeling, let them stay in it, and be there for them when they come out, right? Like that's an actionable principle. Whereas the words, oh, I see that you're feeling nervous. Like when your child is yelling, like that's not a magic spell that you get to say. And a lot of content makes it feel like it kind of is.
Yeah. Well, Andrew was saying a lot of people come to you for the script, which it's fair because a lot of these people are our listeners, are even me, wondering like, okay, I'm facing this dilemma with my child. What do I say? But I love your passion for like, let's understand this person, because it's similar to like if you found out your husband was researching, or your partner, whoever your person is going and they're finding out from the internet. What do I say back to my lovely love about this? And you're like, what? Just listen to me. Just listen to me and show me that you listen to me. I don't want you to ask some person over there what to say to me. I'm a unique person. And so, I think that's something that I have enjoyed about doing this with you is you have scripts. I mean, you give us all the time things like, try this. I would say something similar to this. But your whole deal has been like, this is a person and you are a person and you both have shapes and you both have an experience happening. And I guess that's where we, even in doing a podcast, are drawn to this longer form explanation, because it gives more context and it feels more like we're having a sit down conversation with you guys and we're getting to unpack something that's pretty complex. Whereas TikTok and Instagram can make it so simple. And then you often leave feeling like kind of afraid or like you're doing it wrong, or I don't know, it's just not a good feeling.
Or you take it like it's a magic word and then you go in there and you say the thing and then it doesn't work. And then you're like, oh, well, parenting advice doesn't work. Or, oh, that person doesn't know what they're talking about. I did what you said and it didn't work. And really what happened was that like you parroted a piece of language that by itself isn't the thing. And that's not your fault if you pulled that from a 30-second clip on Instagram. Like it makes sense that wouldn't totally equip you. Like Instagram is a helpful place for new ideas, for reminders, for introducing yourself.
Promoting a podcast.
For little bits of encouragement. Like those are the kinds of things to take from there. But we're going to stick with just the language, this desire to harvest a bunch of words that aren't yours. And know how to like, I'm just going to apply this word here and this word here and this phrase here. And then it's going to solve the thing. Like I want to very gently point out, lumping myself into like, of course, I went looking for that also when I started working with kids of like, oh, well, then what's the thing I say to solve this riddle? And then the problem will vanish. The problem with that is that the problem isn't a puzzle to solve. The problem is like this little person is having a complex emotion. That's actually not a problem to solve. It's not a puzzle. What I'm doing when I'm looking for the perfect thing to say is I'm actually looking for a way to kind of like manipulate them out of the thing that they're doing. Really, that drive comes from I'm uncomfortable with these hefty negative emotions. And so I'm looking for a way to manipulate this other person to not have them. I'm like trying to disappear the actual experience that this child is having because it's uncomfortable for me. Whether it's uncomfortable for me just totally on my end or like, as you and I have discussed many times, that sort of codependent thing of like, I can't stand it when you're uncomfortable to such a degree that like, it's actually me taking care of my own need to try and like make your discomfort go away.
Right.
And I think that's a reasonable thing to feel. And I think there's a sweetness in there too of like, oh, I just want everybody to feel good all the time. But it's not a successful goal. It's not a reasonable goal that we would be finding like the magic solution that will disappear tantrums, that will disappear arguments or conflicts, or whisk the grief away from my child so that they never feel that grief, right? What we have to do, I think, as a very first step in being adequate leaders in a relationship with our children is really be able to accept this is a person who's going to go through all of the human experiences. Many of those are uncomfortable. Much of their discomfort is going to be loud. A lot of them being uncomfortable is going to be really disruptive. It's uncomfortable to be in a relationship with other people, especially a person who's this fresh and learning. Life is quite challenging to learn how to do. And there's going to be a ton of friction in it because really, to like metaphorically, small children just have to bump up against everything in order to find out what the shape of everything is and how it works and what moves and what doesn't and where the edges of themselves are. Like it's a very friction-filled, textured experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And absolutely no humans make it out of this world without experiencing grief, small tragedies, large tragedies, difficult things, stuff that's frustrating. Like that's part of it. And if your goal as a parent or my goal as a teacher is to make sure that our children don't have to tolerate any frustration or experience any grief, I good luck to you if you accomplish that. Let me know. That would be kind of wild.
Yeah,
hit me up because I've never heard of a person ever, right, who has never had to suffer. Yeah, there are pieces of human suffering that are little and some that are big, and that's part of it. So there is nobody on Instagram, and there's no me and there's no you who's going to provide for you, listener, or us, each other, any game plan or set of like riddles 3 to give to the discomfort trolls that are going to like disappear everything. You can't have that. This is not a hopeless podcast, but I do want to dash that particular hope.
I think that is crucial to the mom who's feeling like she's trying everything and it's still really hard. Because I was that person. And what I thought it meant was that I was doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand that it's just a really tough responsibility. It's also awesome. It's also, for a lot of us, I mean, we interviewed Claire and she's like, actually becoming a mom was like way better than people made it sound. And that is also true. Some of you are in that boat, but even you can nod alongside us like, oh yeah, there are parts of this job that are so hard. And we would love for someone on Instagram to sell us this like magic phrase or this riddle that will take away the real challenges and discomfort of raising young children. That whole thing is super important to just remind ourselves this is really hard and super meaningful. And even this stage of a child's life is so temporary. So again, we've talked about it before, but just reminding ourselves this is meaningful, this is temporary, this is meaningful, this is temporary. Because when you're in the thick of the chaos, the tantrum, the being underslept, the prioritizing 6 people's needs all at the same time, it does get overwhelming and you do kind of want to quit. And it's really big.
And that's a big part of the reason why we perceive every time a child is crying or upset as a problem to be solved is because like, oh, aren't I supposed to be making your life like totally good? And so I do want you to feel relief to not have to do that. You don't have to make every second of their life good or there's a problem that has to be solved. They're just people living a life. Some of that life's uncomfortable. Most of it's great. Most of it's really fun and pretty chill. And most of the time people are getting along okay. And then you bump into some moments that are tricky. I also don't mean to be like painting life as just like so full of suffering. Like,
and also I think you or Dr. Sam or someone in a previous podcast made the point that really affected me of like when your kids cry and you respond and they cry and you respond, even if you don't solve the problem, even if they keep crying, like just you caring about the noise they're making does something really beautiful in their life, and has to do with attachment and has to do with who they're going to be later and what they expect from the world. So that's also special, is realizing like you can't take away everything that bothers them and makes their existence tricky. But you caring about them, you caring enough to listen to a podcast, that's a loving act. And that type of love goes a really long way for a developing person. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So if you're that kind of person, amazing. Have I got a tool for you, which is a lot of the times when you try to use these like big little feelings scripts, which are amazing. I think that those people are phenomenal. Strong recommend. But the times that you have tried to like watched a reel or like taken their course and then tried to say that thing, and then it made your child more angry, or it fell totally flat on the floor and had no effect. Often that kind of thing is going to be because your actual goal is not to connect with your child in this moment or to validate their feeling or to do whatever the principle is behind there. It is, if you could be honest, to like plug this in and make the problem go away. And a child can feel that. I was listening to a Janet Lansbury podcast. This is where this idea sparked from last night. She was answering a listener email, and one of the things that the mom had done was she wanted her child to put their own pull-up on. And this kid can put the pull-up on, and he's been doing it for months and everything's been fine. And he was like yelling at her because he wanted her to put it on. And what she said, which felt like gentle parenting to her, which felt like Janet Lansbury style respectful parenting, was, wow, that can be really tricky. Why don't you just put one leg in and then let me know if you need help? And I was like, oh, I see how she thinks she did the thing. What she means is not that can be really tricky. And what her child was saying was not, it's too hard for me to put my pull-up on. He's saying, I want you to do it. And what she means is, I'm not going to do that right now. I don't want to put your pull-up on for you. Or my hands are full. I'm not going to do that right now. Or that's something I'm having you practice, so I'm going to leave you to that. But what she said was a very Instagram-y thing. Yeah, I see it can be really tricky to put your pull-up on. Why don't you just go ahead and put one foot in there? And it's this nice kind of fluffy, very indirect thing. The result was that this child yelled at her more. That was the words that instigated the tantrum. And that was the question, was like, I did the thing, the respectful, I acknowledged his circumstance, and then I gave him one little part to break down. And like, sure, fine. And if the circumstance was, it's too hard for me to put my pull-up on, I don't want to, that would have totally been a reasonable thing to say. Yeah, that is hard. Here's one tiny piece. Why don't you try this one tiny piece and then I'll help you. But instead, she was like, ugh, he's going to yell in this circumstance. What's the thing I say? Instead of just saying, no, I'm not going to put your pull-up on for you right now. I want you to be practicing that. Or, sorry, buddy, I'm just not available to help right now. I'll be right here. Let me know if it gets tough.
Yeah.
Love you. And then kid tantrumed, and she was like, I offered hugs. And I'm like, sure, that's nice. But like, not the problem. Right? And also not what she means.
But even if she did the right thing, he probably still would have tantrumed, because what he wants is for you to put the pull-up on. And a lot of times little kids, if you don't put the pull-up on, they're going to freak out. And then you're like, okay, yeah, that's fine.
Right.
You can freak out.
But even in that tantruming interaction, there's a connection there. Right? There's me saying the real thing, which is, I'm not going to do that for you right now, bud. I know it's really frustrating for you sometimes when I'm not available to help. That's true. That's acknowledging, right? But I'm being clear. I'm not trying to pad around the thing that I'm saying so that maybe it won't cause an explosion. Maybe it won't. Sometimes when I'm really clear with children and I just say, I get right up in their little face and I say, I see that you want me to do that. I'm not going to do it right now. I love you. Okay. They don't like it, but they get it. Think clear as in not foggy, as in like no cotton candy clouds around the real thing. It's just the actual
You're saying what's
thing.
actually happening.
And that's the goal, right? Because also a lot of these like sort of correcting your language on Instagram things, that is what they're trying to do. But we can pull these things out of context and just try to like sort of fluff up the world so that like maybe I won't like spark the landmine of this little toddler, when in fact, all of these like strategies and context from the internet, they're only valuable if they're actually like adding clarity to the child, like if it's actually helping the child understand what's going on. So like when I was early in teaching preschool with like another teacher, we were learning about like how to teach emotional intelligence for the first time. And a big part of that at the level of littles is just accurate names for the feelings. You know, it used to just be like children feel happy or they're mad or they're sad. And when they're a tiny baby, that sort of is true. Sure. But then as you get bigger, obviously there are like 35 different distinct emotions that you can have. And helping children figure out which one of those things it is that gives them a label for that feeling that they can then use in the future. So when that feeling comes up again, they know what it is and they can recognize it in others. Like these are some of the very simple building blocks of emotional intelligence and like a strong relationship with yourself. They help feelings feel less scary because you know what it is, you know what to call it, you know how to talk about it. You can come to me now and say, I feel frustrated. I feel disappointed. Yes. Instead of just yell. I'm disappointed is so powerful. That's like such a real thing you could tell an adult and then that person would know how to help you instead of just feeling something so overwhelming. But this other teacher who was like new with me, she did this sort of cute thing where instead of saying mad, because we learned like anger is a secondary emotion. There's usually like another emotion under there. She would just call all negative feelings frustrated. And she would like use frustrated as a euphemism instead of saying mad, when in fact, like sometimes children are actually feeling angry. Oh, you feel angry about that. She would be like, you feel frustrated. Or like, I remember one time we had this big whole fence that went over into like a big gully and things went over that fence a lot. And a child threw their own shoe over that. And they were so sad. They were so surprised. They really did not occur to them that Noah would be able to get that back. Like the shoe is gone. They're completely surprised, totally confused, and grieving a little because they lost their shoe. And she was like, you're so frustrated, Pat, you're so frustrated that your shoe is gone. When really like, no, there's all these other words that you are. And what she just didn't want to say was mad or sad because we learned that was the bad thing to not say, which it's not. It's just so cute. It's just that we're trying to be more specific, right? Sure. The new rule about say this and not that. The rule is be specific. The principle underneath is let's work together with this child. Did you know that your shoe would be gone if you threw it over the fence? No. Oh, you must be surprised. Wow. That kind of like that feeling is surprise. Oh my gosh. It's not what you thought would happen. Yeah. You thought something different would happen. That's disappointing to think one thing will happen and then have another thing happen. Whoa. Yeah. Like those are specific. It's not don't say mad. It's find the specific thing that is true. We're trying to add clarity, add connection, not like do the right little dance to like get the bad feelings to go away. Yeah. And so her saying frustrated was not better than the old thing of kids are mad or sad or they're happy. It actually like created a little more distance between her and that child in that moment. It blocked connection because she's still not connecting with their actual emotion. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a very doable thing with this Instagram reel of say this, not that.
Totally. I think the emphasis on connection, how do I say this? It's weird now being in this like space of parenthood and motherhood, this online community building thing, because for me personally, I don't feel super attached to a certain way of mothering. And I think because we are trying to do a really good job as parents, we are really trying not to mess these kids up. We don't necessarily trust ourselves for a number of reasons, but one might just be that we're new to this. And so we assume we don't have a clue. So then we look outwardly for the thing, and then we just want to do the thing we learn out there. Probably like your coworker, like, okay, someone taught me what to say. Perfect. I'm going to say this.
Yeah. We all want to do it right. We all care a ton about this.
Yeah. But what I really appreciate about what you're saying, and I think is something that we just like share a value on, and even Very Good Mothers Club has this as a value, is like the style of connecting with your toddler has less to do with saying the right thing or doing the right thing that exists outside of you, and more has to do with like tuning into what's going on in you and what's going on in this little person and responding accordingly. And it can be so valuable to have some prompts and some, well, I've said this, you could mimic me. But also you have inside of you the ability to do this and do this really well.
Yeah.
And so part of what we're maybe trying to help encourage is a sense of trust and confidence within yourself.
Yeah.
You know your toddler, or even if it's not your own toddler, like you're having this interesting experience of having a bunch of toddlers in a room and you're having to learn them and then deal with these big emotional flare-ups, all throughout the day. Even still, you have the ability to tune in and try and understand them and really build a sense of connection by doing what you're saying. Call things exactly what they are.
Yeah.
Don't fluff around them. And I don't know much about big little feelings. They must be really successful because everyone knows who they are.
Very successful.
Yeah. So they must have worked for some people.
Reason.
Yeah.
They're so smart. They're
That's awesome.
so clear on top. I've never seen anything from them that I'm not like, that's awesome.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I think that something about a big company like that, or they're probably not big, but they're well known, right? Something that you also are experiencing, I'm experiencing, is we have to interact with this social media world in a way that gets us seen, but sometimes it like cheapens the actual thing we're bringing because we have to create something so that it'll be viewed.
Yeah.
But like, I wish Instagram didn't force you to talk for 30 seconds because so much of what we all are craving is this, like the meat of what this is. And I guess, thank goodness you talked me into doing a podcast. Really, like, thank goodness, because
it was not hard to talk her into doing a podcast.
As long as I was like, I just don't want to say this. But so far so good. It's just, I guess, a gift to be able to like have this type of conversation going on and really realize like, oh yeah, I don't just have to copy the thing that I saw.
Right.
I can do this myself.
Right.
With this little person.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I don't even terribly mean to be super critical of like Instagram content, but its role is to remind you or to spark interest, to have you be like, oh, that's curious. I don't totally know what that means. I'm going to go find out what this principle is or this philosophy or whatever. It's got a role. And of course, it's not giving you everything you need. It's 30 seconds long. Like it's nobody's job to...
A lot of times less.
A lot of times 15 seconds. Holy moly. Yeah. We want children to be able to believe our words. Like we want to build trust with them. And for any person, one of the most important pieces of trust is to be able to say what you mean and to like believe that the other person is meaning what they say to you. Did I say the thing about your feelings are valid? Have I said that?
Yeah.
I did
about
say
Connor?
That. Yeah.
Oh, well, you said it, but I don't know if it's in this.
Okay. I'm going to say a thing again.
Yeah, just in case.
And we'll find out
cool.
if it got lost.
Okay.
So like to bring it up to an adult example, like if you, Jess, are telling me about like something going on in your business that you're having a really hard time finding your way through, something kind of unfair is happening, or like you tried really hard and thought something was going to work and then it didn't. If I said, oh, your feelings are so valid. Your feelings are valid. That's an okay thing to say. That's actually like a good way to respond to you. But really saying the words, your feelings are valid, that's not quite the thing, right? The thing would be like, wow, that's a big deal. Seems like you tried really hard and that's absolutely not working. It makes so much sense to me that you're feeling frustrated, right? You thought that thing was going to go this other way and it didn't. That's so disappointing.
Yeah.
Wow. My accurate reflection to you would be like, oh, I see you
validating my
feeling this thing.
Yeah.
And that seems valid to me. Connor was on a phone call with a friend and he came out of the room the other night and was just like, you can't just tell someone that their feelings are valid. That's nothing. That doesn't say anything. You can't just say your feelings are valid, right? Like, even though that's the thing, if I were to use the principle of validating someone's feelings in a way that's real, that's what I mean, versus when we've all done this in conversations with people where like your friend is having a really big thing happen in life and you don't know how to respond. So you're just racking your brain for what's the right thing to say. Oh, your feelings are valid. Like, if I do that in a way that's not coming from my actual connectedness to what she's saying, or like if I don't actually think her feelings are valid and I just say that thing, instead of connecting, that actually kind of blocks connection a little bit for me to just like throw up this generic thing that I think is the right thing to say.
Right.
Like it actually hinders like the real flow of connection. And I leave space to wonder, like, does she mean that? Like,
I guess it's similar to like someone saying, I hear you, but blah, blah, blah. And you're like, but I'm
Absolutely.
pretty sure you just didn't hear me at all.
Yes.
You just said, I hear you because that was the thing that you should say, but you did it without listening to me.
right. As opposed to being like, wow, I really hear that.
Or what I'm hearing you say is this. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yes. We're trying
That's
to
funny.
actually add clarity. We're trying to
Right.
actually connect. And some of this is just a little bit of a check on ourselves in those moments, because a lot of the time we're sitting there looking at a kid being like, I see that you're frustrated. I see you're frustrated. Just stop being frustrated. I hate that you're frustrated. Is what I just
Right.
Your frustration is so loud and I'm really mad about it. Like the real thing is like, I just wish you were quiet instead of this. And what you can say is, this sound has been going on for a long time, bud. This is feeling tough for me. I see that you're frustrated, and also the noise you're making is really hard for me to listen to. Still here. Love you. I really hope we can be done with this sound soon.
Yeah.
Like even that is a fairly connected, it's a real reflection. Like you're in a relationship, you're being honest with them, which is different from like, I hate the sound you're making, right? I'm not also giving a cart. So you could take, if you took the tone of my voice away, you could even take those words and go use them incorrectly and be like, well, Lane said I could say I hate that sound. Like there is like a little bit of a self-accountability that has to be happening here of like, how am I using these words, or do I mean it? And when the next time you're like sitting there with your kid yelling at you, the thing to do is not be like, what's the right thing to say? The thing to do is be like, what do I actually mean? What do I actually want? What that I mean could I say right now, right? Because you're also not going to say everything you mean. We don't do that to people we're in relationship with.
That's good.
Looking at some notes here.
That's really good.
So indirectness actually really separates us. It's annoying to a very strong-willed child for you to say something that's indirect, right? Like if Jules is really wanting you to do something for her, and instead of saying, I'm not going to do that for you, you say something about like a different thing, you know, like if you're trying to distract her or you're trying to dance around the thing, she's laser focused on that thing she wants you to do.
Yeah.
And so if you're just deflecting from her, like that is aggravating to a person who's like, I am telling you to put on my shoes for me. And if you're off here talking about something else, she's like, how dare you? I'm being so clear with you, mother. True. It's aggravating. Or for super sensitive children, it's alienating, right? If like Wilson's being clear with you and you're not there for him, he's sensitive. That is like is she even, does she even looking at, can she even see me? You know, like there's, the indirectness does not work for children. They really know whether or not you're actually looking at them. Yeah. Even if you don't know what to say, to just be quiet and really look at them until you have decided what you want to say, like do that instead. Like don't be adding this fluffy noise. Like find a way to be with them and do the thing.
No, we've even talked about just bending down to eye level with them. How it shifts in an interaction, and we don't even necessarily know what we're going to do from down there. But it's just if we were spending a lot of time being over them and we're just basically missing each other, and it's they're tantruming and like we sort of feel like we're tantruming. It's just getting down on their level and like, okay, so what is going on here? What do we need? What do we see? It really does change things.
Yeah. Even if you can't be a person who has a response, just being like a connected observer, just your actual presence, like your actual presence saying nothing, even your actual presence saying the wrong thing is more connective to a child than your distractedness, tossing niceties at them, or your like, I'm bracing myself against you. I'm trying to guard against your feeling by saying the right thing, but I'm saying the right thing. Like it's the, but I'm saying the right thing is not gonna cut it.
Not a real thing.
Yeah. Even a clear, honest no is way more connective than like a sweet, soft dodge. And they're going to feel that. So like as we're scrolling through Instagram content, some of it's going to be for you and a bunch of it isn't. And the bunch of it that isn't, just ditch it. You don't need to argue with or tangle with or like try to rationalize your way through. Like not all reels are for you. Maybe we should have started there. And the ones that do hit, they have a little sparkle for you or they hit something salient inside, you get to hold them and think about them and find out what's real and then go do the real thing.
Yeah.
REAL. Do the actual thing, the honest thing, the authentic thing. And then leave the rest. And sometimes you're going to find a piece of language that is absolutely what you mean and absolutely what your kid needs to hear and amazing. Use that script every time if that thing like works for you. Wonderful. It's just an offering. Everything that you find on the internet, everything that you find on this podcast, it's like someone holding out a plate of food for you being like, any of this like tempting to you? Would any of this be tasty? Would any of this be nourishing? And you check with your body, am I hungry? Does any of this food look good? Would this be, am I allergic to anything on this plate? Don't eat that. Like that's not for you, you know?
That's good.
But also what I'm describing is something that's hard for a lot of us as grownups.
Yes.
To say what you mean is not easy for everyone. And it's not easy for me a lot of the time.
Yeah. And we're scared of the response, whether we're talking about toddlers or we're talking about other grownups.
Yeah.
The fear a lot of times is some sort of rejection or backlash or being, I don't know, it could be so many things. I'm afraid of being too much for someone. I'm afraid of whatever they might do. I'm afraid of putting myself out there. It's pretty vulnerable to say what you mean and then have the person either not get it or not want to give you what you need. But it does make relationships much more complicated if we are mind reading, if we're attempting to guess what someone else is thinking or hoping that they'll guess what we're thinking. What a tiring way to live. So yeah, if we can just be in the practice of using accurate words to bring clarity to what's actually going on inside of us, that should make everything easier and more simple. Hello, spouse.
Right.
Here's what I need. Oh, thank you for your clarity.
Right.
Here I am meeting your need, you know?
Yeah. I mean, if your goal is to say it right every time and do everything perfectly, like that's a very complicated goal.
No.
But if your goal is like, do I have some tools that help me get to what I actually mean?
Yeah.
And like, then the only thing you have to go inside and find is, what do I actually mean? Okay. Do I have the tools to express that? No. Okay. Maybe something could help me have, maybe there's something out here that could like help me wrap what I mean in some words that are going to work. But not, have I done Janet Lansbury's version and Dr. Becky's version and Big Little Lies, and have I pleased Elaine and Jessica? Like, whoa, you don't need to be doing that.
That's too much. Yeah, that's too much. And you also sometimes don't really know what you need. At least that's what I feel. It's like, I don't really know what I need. All I know is that I feel overwhelmed, confused, and I think tired.
Yeah.
And like maybe hungry.
Pretty hungry.
Oh, yeah. And so then just to be able to be like, okay, well, at least all I've got is the thing I feel. From there, maybe a loved one could tap in and like help you identify the underlying need.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And you know what you say in that moment? Oh my gosh, I don't know what to do to help you right now. Good thing there's another grown up here. I'm going to let you sit right here on the floor in whatever you're feeling. And I'm going to go ask for some help. See you in a sec.
Yeah.
That's true. That's plenty.
Right.
That's real.
That's good.
That's emotional intelligence. That's clarity.
Great. So what are the scripts I say to my toddler to help them stop doing all the tantrum? No, I'm just kidding.
I see that you feel frustrated. I see your frustration and I validate you. Oh, you're having a big feeling. Your feelings are valid. Say that every time and it's going to work.
Are valid.
Whoa, look at those big feelings.
Are valid.
If you can say it in your Miss Rachel voice with some Dr. Becky words, but vague, crushing.
done.
Just
Start
kidding, don't do that.
your own channel. Actually, I did have a really cute thing happen this morning, though, that you reminded me of, is Jules. She's very, very independent when it comes to getting dressed for the day. She's the fastest of every kid in my house. And she just knows exactly what she wants to wear. And if you put on something, if I like go and put a shirt on her that she doesn't want to wear, she removes it moments later to put on the thing she wanted to wear. Anyway, this morning she got herself fully ready so that she could have a piece of candy on the way to school. That was what she had said will make sense for this. I was like, well, can't really argue. She's holding the candy. She's like, look what I found. Can I have this on the way to school? Anyway, she starts fussing because she can't get her little chubby foot into her sock. You know, like baby feet are like squishy. Hers is still squishy. And she's like, ooh, like doing her frustrated sound. And I was like, oh, I know, Jules. It is hard to put a foot in a sock. Like it actually is. And she was like, when you were little, did you have it hard putting your foot in a sock? And I was so impressed. I was like, wow, that is quite a developed thought to connect. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. I really did. Thank you. But I thought like, oh, that's for me, that felt like a moment, because I do it all the time where I'm like, oh, Jules, I know why you're frustrated. Like it's this, or I know why you're having your big moment. And then she just like does not care that I know why she's having it. She's like, just fix it. But this one was cute, where she was like, oh, really? You had that with your big fat foot in your sock when you were a little baby?
That's sweet. It was really cute. That's a glimmer of 3-year-old hope right there. I know, you know, like it's not just like, oh my God, my feeling is the only thing that exists. Yeah. It's like she's actually thinking there will be a moment after this. Yeah. I'm upset now. Yeah. Oh, and you're a person. And you're not mad now. Yeah, exactly. I probably will also. Exactly.
She and Wilson were having an argument, and he was like, no, but Julesy, we will be grown-ups one day. And she's like, no, we will not. And he's like, no, we will. And he's like, Mommy, won't we be grown-ups one day? They're in the bathtub. I was like, yeah, you will. And she's like, I'm going to die. And he goes, well, we can't live forever. Oh my God, what? I know. And then he goes, are we going to meet God in heaven? And I was like, wow, these are some big little thoughts. Yeah. In the bathtub. I thought it was so funny.
Oh, that's amazing.
Are we going to die? Like, wow. Okay.
That is such a direct line.
I know. Kids are smart.
That was cool. Yeah. Look at her being direct and clear.
It's funny what they argue about. Anyway, okay, this was great. Amazing. You did great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
If you guys want coaching from Lane, like real coaching one-on-one, like, but Lane, this is what my toddler's doing. She's actually amazing at that too. Like she's really good at this, talking to a big group of you about your big situations. But you nail it at one-on-one things. You're really good at being able to offer like, have you tried this? What about this? Let me understand this. Okay.
It is what really I would cool, do. Yeah. To be able to get super specific because they are not all the same. No. They're absolutely not all the same, right? Yeah. I would give you very different advice for Juliet versus Wilson.
Yes, exactly. And you really do offer like, you could try saying this, or you could try giving them this. Like there are a lot of practicalities that go with all of these principles and values. Absolutely. So if you find yourself listening and going, I get the values, I get the principles, but what do I do? You can ask her.
Let's get on the phone.
And and then also they can email us how?
They can email us at verygoodenoughpod@gmail.com.
Yep. So if you have any questions, comments, if you love Lane's hair from this side. And then last thing, if you want to be a part of our community, we would love to have you. It's a great way to feel connected, supported, have access to experts, and just dive deeper into all of these things we're talking about. You can join Very Good Mothers Club, and we would love to have you there. And that is all.
Absolutely. The links for everything
you're doing so good.
Bye.